Hey everybody, Tekking here, and this video is going to be about Brooke. More specifically, we're going to be discussing the Yomi no Mi, the Revive fruit. But since we are talking about the Soul King himself, I thought it would be only appropriate for me to open this up with a skull joke. But I'm not really good at those. You know, it requires a certain amount of comedic timing that I'm just not good at. So instead, I have an expert. Okay, Brooke, are you ready? Humor us. Okay then, so the Yomi no Mi, or the Revive fruit, is a very unique devil fruit ability that actually allows the user to come back from the fucking dead. Yeah, even by Paramecia standards, you know, this is the category that Oda just kind of shuffles every other power that he didn't think of a category to put into. Like, we can have people turning into rubber, people turning into weapons, manipulating string, turning into eggs and shit. Even by those standards, the ability to just flat out come back from the dead, that's pretty crazy. That's pretty out there, you know? I'm kind of glad that, oh, Brooke, your tag is showing. I'm kind of glad that Brooke is the one that ate the fruit and not somebody else. Like, can you imagine if somebody that's, like, really powerful, that's, like, an enemy, had the Revive fruit? Like, somebody that was already powerful enough without having a devil fruit. Because the fruit itself doesn't actually give you any abilities while you're still alive, other than just, actually, it just gives you the weaknesses of the devil fruit. So, while Brooke had the fruit while he was alive, he couldn't swim. He would still, you know, if he came in contact with Sea Prism Stone, he would still be weakened, but it didn't give him any abilities beyond that. So, can you imagine if somebody like, I don't know, like Kaido, you know, I don't know if Kaido has a devil fruit, but let's just say he doesn't. Let's just say he's this really strong motherfucker. He eats the Yomi no Mi. The Yomi no Mi doesn't give him any abilities. He's still a super strong guy, but then he just comes back to life after you manage to kill him, which is already a pretty tall order, you know? So, I'm glad Brooke is an ally, and he's the one that actually ended up eating it. Okay, so a few things about this. So it involves a lot, and there's a lot involving Japanese mythology with this. Even the term Yomi can mean the underworld in Japanese. We don't exactly know much about the afterlife in the One Piece story. We don't really know what Oda's going for all that much, although it seems to have references to, you know, typical, you know, like Japanese mythology and shit, because when Brook dies, his soul takes the appearance of a Hitodama. And this is the kind of appearance, like, you see this in other anime too, like they show up like this in Dragon Ball, and I think even in Yu Yu Hakusho, like you see like souls taking this appearance sometimes, like they just this little puffy cloud kind of appearance. And so whenever someone dies that eats the Yomi no Mi, their soul, the Hitodama, emerges from their body, goes up to the you know, the great beyond or whatever, and then just gets like bitch slapped back into reality, back into the living world, allowing them to find their body, enter it, and then take on a second life. There's a few things about this, a few rules, so to speak. So, number one, this does not guarantee the person is going to be immortal or, you know, eternal youth or anything like that. This is just giving the person a second chance at life. Brook died when he was 38 years old, and he was resurrected a year later after his soul finally found him. He then lived 50 years on the ship by himself, and then he was picked up by the Straw Hats. Brook is now currently 90 years old. So, you know, people bring up, you know, well, when will Brook die, or will Brook just live forever now that he's been revived? I really think it's just going to be like you get a second lifespan tacked onto you. I think the average lifespan for humans right now, I think that's like 79, 80 years old. So let's say you die at the age of 79 and you come back, you know, because you ate the Revive fruit, you're just guaranteed, you know, another rough 80 years of life. You know, that's as much as you're guaranteed. Now, in the One Piece world, it's a little different, because the natural lifespan of humans, just ordinary humans in the One Piece world, is about 140. Now, if you're superhuman, if you have abilities that go beyond other people, you can live longer than that. We know this from Dr. Kureha, because Dr. Kureha, she was 139 before the time skip, and then she was 141 after the time skip. And I remember somebody wrote an SBS question to Oda, like, is Dr. Kureha going to be okay because, you know, she's 141? And Oda's response was like, oh no, that 140, that's just like for normal humans, but Dr. Kureha is a superhuman, so she goes beyond that. So I think Brook is, if he died when he was 38 and he comes back when he's like 39, I guess, I suppose that would guarantee him at least around another 140 years. But then again, Brook is a pretty strong dude that's probably superhuman as well in his own right, so I don't think we have to worry about Brook dying again of natural causes anytime soon. But once again, the fruit doesn't make you immortal. You could still end up getting killed. Brook mentioned that being in the state he's in right now, you know, even if somebody like lops off his skull, skull, he could just reattach it using his soul power. I was doing the devil sign for a second, like, I don't know. The soul power, but if his bones are actually physically damaged, like if someone just takes a hammer to his skull and just pounds the shit out of it, he won't be able to recover from that. If he's just reduced to dust, I guess he would die in that situation. Another potential drawback of the fruit, and I say potential because this is just depending on how you look at it, is that whenever you are revived, you're revived in whatever state your body happens to be in at the time. Your soul doesn't immediately lock back onto your body. Whenever you get bitch slapped from the great beyond and you get sent back to the living world, it's not like your soul is just magnetized back to your body. No, Brooke appeared in like the general area where he died, but remember, this was in the middle of the Florian Triangle. This was in a very foggy sea, and poor little soul Brooke couldn't find his way back home. After a year of wandering the sea, he finally found himself, but he was a skeleton at this point. So the positives here is that the fruit's ability still does allow you to come back, even if your body is in a state that simply does not allow for life to function. Even if you don't have any organs, even if you don't have eyes, you could still see, you don't have any eardrums, you could still hear, you could still eat, you could still drink, you could still presumably poop. Apparently, according to Brooke, he does indeed poop. Don't know where it comes from, but he can do it. So yeah, the fruit does guarantee you, like, okay, it kind of gives you some leeway. Even if your body is in a state of just ruin, the fruit will provide you with the faculties you need. And the way that this is actually explained later on is that it's actually Brooke's soul that provides him the power. So think of Brooke's body as nothing more as just a puppet. When he's not seeing anything with his eyes, he doesn't have eyes. He's seeing with his soul power. He's hearing with his soul. He's tasting things with his soul. I know that doesn't make a lot of sense, but it's the best way I could properly describe this, like if somebody walked up to Brooke with a can of pepper spray and sprayed it in his eyes, he has no eyes, so it would be like, that doesn't hurt me, but, it's his soul that actually is perceiving the world and compensating for all his senses, I guess. The way that this could be, a negative is you're stuck like a skeleton the rest of your life, so that kind of sucks a bone, but on the other side, like Brooke said, he does have some bonuses with this. How he can't be damaged as easily as if he was human. When you're flesh and blood, you can get your organs punctured, but when you come back as a skeleton, you don't have to worry about that. Someone could come at you and stab you with like a rapier all the ding-dong day, and as long as they don't actually crack your bone, you don't have to worry about getting your organs damaged. You don't have to worry about getting your brain rattled or anything like that. It's just you got to watch out for your actual bones getting damaged themselves, and as long as you can deal with the fact that you're sort of like an undead abomination, then it's fine. I would actually prefer waiting around a year for your body to be revived, because that way, at least when you're in battle, there's some I keep saying bonuses. I'm serious. I'm not trying to be funny. It just happens. There's some benefits from that, So the other big benefit of having this devil fruit, the one that Brooke discovered over the course of the time skip, is that it allows his soul to actually enter and exit his body, astral projection, basically. He's allowed to leave his body whenever he so desires. Now this is a little weird on how he discovered this ability. So the story that Brooke tells is that over the course of the time skip, he was the Soul King. He was this rock and roll dude going around singing and shit, and his fans loved him. Well, apparently, at some point during the 2-year skip, he was he was in a lull. He was in a moment where his singing career wasn't, it was kind of on a downward spiral. People were like, I didn't feel his soul, man. That last concert, man, it just wasn't good. It wasn't like his old stuff. And so Brooke was like kind of a little depressed. He was praying. He gets on his hands and his kneecaps and he prays here. He's like, I need to see how to fix this. Please, somebody help me. And, the soul then exits his mouth, and he's like freaking out because he's like, oh my god. But then he figures out what this is. My question is, Brooke was alone on that ship for 50 years. You mean to tell me at not one point when he was on that ship, Brooke felt so depressed he was trying to pray to a god like, please, please, One Piece god, please, Eneru, please let me find an island, let me get out of this sea. I've been floating around here on a goddamn boat for the past, few decades with the corpses of my friends. Please alleviate me from this suffering. You don't think Brooke ever did that when he was on the ship? You think he would have done it at least one time, and at least the one time he did it, his soul would exit. So it's just weird that he found out about this power late during the time skip. But maybe you could throw in, maybe he was so depressed he didn't even see any reason for praying. It wasn't until after he met the Straw Hats and he had fans, you know, when he was the Soul King and he had actual legitimate friends in the Straw Hats, that he actually felt like he needed to pray, you know, from the bottom of his heart cavity, you know. I don't know, but that's the course of action. So this spirit thing that Brook can create, it's an interesting thing. Apparently, it can be semi-invisible, but it can also be visible sometimes, because he stated he used this ability to spy on, like, women, you know, when they were taking baths and shit, because, you know, Brook, very much like Sanji, is a pervert. So that would imply that it can be invisible if he wants it to be invisible, but other times, like when he uses it during Fishman Island, he was using it to try to get Papagoo to, you know, help them out, and, you know, Papagoo could see it, as well as other people being able to see it sometimes, like Usopp and Zoro when he first displayed this power. So it would be very useful if he could switch back and forth between it being, you know, invisible. It's also being able to endow it into weapons. The soul form itself doesn't seem to have any combat abilities. He can't, it would be really cool if he could, like, go into somebody's body and, like, possess them or something, but we haven't seen him do that. The soul form, you know, aside from looking kind of cool, having, like, the ghostly fire around it, can't actually do anything other than reconnaissance purposes, but it's still pretty damn sweet. But he can take his soul power that's being generated, and he can endow it into his weapon, his sword, Soul Solid. So he causes the winds of the underworld, as he refers to it as, the freezing winds, to be channeled into his sword. Apparently keeping his soul, which was supposed to have died, in the realm of the living, you know, creates a very special kind of unique energy signature coming off of Brook. So, I don't know, he's like a nuclear skeleton or something like that. He's creating a whole new energy source here. But yeah, that takes a lot of power to keep a soul in the living world. So Brook is now making use of this ability, and you'd think there'd be other ways that he can do it other than just channeling it into his swords. You think, I don't know, take a gun. I mean, maybe he could channel his soul energy into a gun, or make it tougher, faster, stronger, better. I don't know. I'm just throwing ideas out there. But yeah, that's an aspect of his fruit he can certainly do. Something else that we've seen that he can do with his power of his Yomi Yomi no Mi is that when he's fighting against opponents that have a similar power, he can actually negate it, or at least affect it in some way. Now, this is a more specific kind of power, because you're not going to run into abilities that always deal with souls all the time, but you know who does is Big Mom, because Big Mom ate the soul fruit, so she was able to manipulate the souls of herself and other people. Most notably, she takes the souls of the people in her country, Totland, and puts them into various objects and animals and other kind of creatures in order to give them life. You know, and these are the homies. And Brook's soul fruit, I'm getting confused here. Brook's Yomi Yomi no Mi is very effective against the soul fruit, because the souls of people that are in other objects that are not in their original bodies cannot stand up to Brook's soul power that's emanating from his true body. That's the way Brook put it. So he just, you know, takes out his soul power, takes out his guitar, strums it, and then his soul radiates as like this demon thing. And it knocks out all of the chess soldiers around them in an effect that's very similar to Conqueror's Haki, which I would say in this exact scene against this very particular enemy, Brook basically did have Conqueror's Haki. The chess soldiers were only moving around because they had souls of other people in them. So it's like the body and the soul, they don't actually click. And Brook's soul power was just too much and it overwhelmed them. So against certain opponents, Brook basically does have Conqueror's Haki. I don't want to say that this is his awakening, though, because like I said, this is a very particular kind of instance. I don't think Brook could, you know, break out this ability and it would affect other enemies as much as it would have affected the chess soldiers. And I think it only takes this like demonic badass appearance. This is like how the chess soldiers viewed Brook. That's how terrifying he looked, which is admittedly very fucking awesome. That needs to be on like the side of a band van, or like that needs to be like the logo of something, you know. I don't know, the skull demons or some shit. I don't know. But what would the awakening of this Yomi Yomi no Mi be? Where could you go from here? If you're gonna say that the soul form is not in and of itself the awakening of the fruit, I like to think that Oda is keeping Devil Fruit Awakening sort of like a mysterious kind of special aspect. I know there's people out there that think, like, and even me, I used to think like Chopper's Monster Point, that was definitely Awakening, 100%. Now I'm not so sure. I like to think that Oda's not just going to be like, you get a Devil Fruit Awakening, now this guy gets a Devil Fruit Awakening, and now you get a Devil Fruit Awakening. I really think he's going to keep that as more of like a reserved point. Like, when you get to an awakening, you're gonna know it's a fucking awakening. You're gonna get a big power boost. Like Doflamingo's strings, being able to summon strings and everything, that's one thing. Being able to turn an entire fucking town into strings itself and being able to manipulate those, that's like a whole other level. If Luffy ever gets an awakening, being able to turn, things into rubber, having his little rubber world or something, that would be a big boost. Brook's Yomi no Mi, maybe we can go somewhere beyond that. I don't know. Maybe he could make use of all that energy he's outputting into like way larger attacks or something like that. That could be maybe an awakening. My possession idea, that's an idea. He could, like, his soul could leave his body and possess other bodies. I think that could be like the next step, especially if we're gonna go with like Japanese mythology. There's a shit ton of different, demons and ghosts and shit in Japanese mythology that would possess humans, or you have to be wary about them possessing you. So I could see like that. There's a lot of stuff to go on here, like back-built, mythology that Oda's clearly referencing with Brook's Devil Fruit, that he could just kind of just pick out of a bucket and be like, that's Brook's awakening. But I really think that his soul form isn't. I think that was more of just giving Brook a better way to fight. Because remember, before the time skip, Brook didn't really have all that great, he had some things going for him. Like I said, he couldn't get injured that easily. He couldn't get his organs stabbed or anything. He was a fairly decent swordsman. He was like a fencing kind of style swordsman, but not even close to the level of Zoro. Honestly, Brook's most useful ability that he displayed before the time skip, in my opinion, is his ability to like knock people out with his music. He was able to do that, like that lullaby thing to the Flying Fish Riders, and that made him fall asleep. And at the moment when I saw that the first time before the time skip, I'm reading that like, what the fuck? What is this shit? Later on, after the time skip, it's explained that Brook can actually manipulate people using his music. So that makes more sense, how he was able to knock people out with a lullaby. And he uses that festival night thing to make all of the fishermen think they're like at a drunken festival, so he can emulate, exhaustion, and he can inflict like drunkenness onto his opponents. That's a really cool power to have. I like that. But yeah, that was before the time skip. He had like that lullaby power. But, I think Oda really wanted to give him something else that he could actually use to fight against stronger opponents. So that's why he gave him the soul ability for reconnaissance. Like, he'll be very useful in that respect, and also the icy abilities of Soul Solid in order for him to actually inflict some kind of elemental damage. But yeah, it's a very unique fruit, one of the most unique fruits out of all the Paramecia class. I think that's pretty fair to say, given the fact that it actually brings you back from the dead. There's some interesting little, things you have to be watching out for, It's certainly not a fruit I would like to have. It's certainly not like if I was going to choose to have like a devil fruit or even like 3 or 4 devil fruits, I would not pick the Yomi no Mi. Because there's always that risk, And what happens, by the way, what happens if your body's cremated? What happens if you die and you're like burned alive and then you can't come back? You're just nothing but ashes. What happens if you drown? What happens if you eat the Yomi no Mi and you drown? Okay, then your body comes back and then you drown again. Yeah, so there just seems like Brook got fucking lucky. Brook got luckier than he actually lets on to be. I mean, yeah, he's stuck as a skeleton, but it could have been a lot worse. But hey. At least it didn't turn out to be a major boner. Okay, that was kind of the most lame joke I had, but you know what I mean. Brook's Yomi no Mi, I think I feel like I definitely had to make a specific video on that, considering we're explaining weird Paramecia fruits. And yeah, there's a few others. I want to do Baby Fives and Ivankovs. I feel like I haven't talked about Ivankov at all. I'm doing all these discussion videos and stuff about One Piece, and I don't think I've ever really mentioned Ivankov all too much. So maybe that'll be the next video, talking about Ivankov's character or Ivankov's devil fruit or something like that. As well as that, I also want to kind of talk about, I want to talk about Tamagos at some point. A lot of people want me to talk about Whitebeards, which, it's not like a strange fruit. It's just like kind of like you have to kind of revere it in just terms of its power because it has the potential to destroy the world. I think that's rather interesting. I think we can make a solid video about the Gura Gura no Mi. But anyway, thanks for watching, everybody. Thanks, Brooke, for stopping on by here. He's always a good guy to have on the show. So you have anything to say there, Soul King? May I see your panties? Sorry, my jaw didn't move. May I see your panties? Yo-ho-ho-ho. Okay. Later, everybody. Have a good one. By the way, Brooke's head is a Pokeball. I didn't know if you knew that, but you know that's the secret of Brooke's afro. It is, in fact, a Pokeball. All right. Later, everybody.